Hello and welcome to Beyond the Box Score. I am your host, Cameron Sadeghi, and we have a lot to talk about today here on Beyond the Box Score. We got Richard Sherman and Doug Baldwin mocking the NFL in the news conference. We have Marshawn Lynch being labeled as a jerk by Ed Sherman on the Sherman Report. I'll talk about that. And we have, of course, another Skip Bayless special, Thanksgiving survival tips. I'll tell you why Skip Bayless really needs to reevaluate the article he wrote. But the most important story I'm going to talk about really doesn't have to do with sports today. And I know you may be saying, why are we talking about politics? Why are we talking about big issues? Why are we talking about race? I'm talking about it today because it transcends sports, okay? The systematic racism goes further beyond sports. It goes further what goes on the field, and today we need to talk about it. We really do. We need to talk about it today, and I really love that I got the opportunity to talk to Alex Mercier, UCLA, senior UCLA. He organized, one of the organizers for the protests. Great interview that's going to come up. He did say a few expletives, and I know on here I kind of take pride in not saying expletives, but that's okay. I let it go. So if you have kids around and you don't want them hearing those words, maybe, tell them to go somewhere else or not listen to the interview right now, because he did say a few expletives at the end of the interview. But it is a great interview that I'm going to tell you, that I'm going to let you hear in a few moments, and then I'll give you my reaction, and we'll talk about it, and also we'll talk about the issues that I brought up to here today with Richard Sherman, Doug Baldwin, Marshawn Lynch, and then Thanksgiving football, and why I actually think that maybe we shouldn't have Thanksgiving football. I'll talk about that too here on Beyond the Box Score. But this is the interview that you're not going to want to miss. Take a listen. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Beyond the Box Score here with Alex Mercier. He has been one of the protest organizers for the Michael Brown incident that took place in Missouri. And I want to talk about, what do you think about the media's role and the media's coverage in these events?
Well, the media as a whole has a very unique and critical role, depending on what they decide to air on TV, who they decide to interview, and then how they decide to frame for interviews. You can have similar situations or have the same instance that is reported completely different, and then thus helps to shape public opinion around the events themselves and the people that are engaging in them. So I don't know. I think it was amazing for ourselves, for our rally, that CBS was able to come out and interview students and talk to a lot of people that were, feeling very passionate about these things and are really wanting to show Ferguson support and show them that they're not alone in their frustration, in their anger, and in their pain.
Yes, and you were actually in the CBS article. I want to read some of what you had to say. You said, "Things are happening in Los Angeles. Ezell Ford was a young man in Los Angeles that was killed not too long ago. People need to know these names, because if you can't put a name to it, then it's as if they don't exist." So I thought that was great what you said. And then also you mentioned in the article, I have it right here, I don't know where it went. I can't find it right now. But so you mentioned the media's role. What about social media? I know mainstream media, people have been critical of mainstream media, I've been critical of what they've pretty much not been able to do. I don't think they've talked about systematic racism as a whole, but social media, do you think people have really done a good job on social media talking about this issue, or have they just really been over the top?
I think, on both sides, you have people that, I wouldn't say extremists, but people that, are very passionate about how they feel on both sides. But in social media, I don't use a lot of social media, but in the spaces that I am in, I've seen that everything is done very well, and I think that is a great use of social media, is that it is a counter space to traditional mass media, in that I'm creating my own media, and I'm creating my own space and my own information that can be disseminated towards people, and to people, and that people can see on a large scale. So it's a great way for me to express my opinions, and for other people to express their opinions, and for even people on the ground to show the truth about what's really going on in the world around us. Because if that's not happening, if mass media isn't going to report it, then it's up to you to do that and to get that out to the people. If you don't do it, then it's insane that no one else will.
Do you think that people on social media are focusing too much on looting instead of systematic racism?
Yeah. This year as a whole, this country has never focused on its race problem. So mass media and just people in general in the dominant group are going to be looking at other issues and pointing out other flaws. Yes, that is looting and the violence that was happening in all the fires and stuff. Those shouldn't have been happening, and I think those are very negative. And although I definitely can sympathize with those people, I definitely sympathize, and I understand where the anger and that frustration comes from. But that definitely wasn't the most healthy and positive response, because then you just end up falling into the same track that was laid for you. But mass media as a whole, people as a whole, America as a whole, is not going to focus on the true issue, which is the systematic racism and oppression of communities of color that has been going on since the Europeans came to this country in the first place, came to this land in the first place.
How do we fix systematic racism in America?
I don't have that complete answer, but the first step definitely is acknowledging that it's a problem and acknowledging that it exists. It's the elephant in the room. You have an entire community telling you we have a race problem and that this is an issue and that people are suffering, people are dying literally every day. But you have a dominant group that's telling you that no, that's not an issue. No, that's not real. But even though this is my life experience and I face these things every day, you're telling me that it's not real. So, the very first step is addressing it and acknowledging that these things exist. And then I would say talking to communities of color and asking them, how can we best fix these issues? How can we best address your needs? Because, these are people's lives. And when you're telling someone that, your life experience is not valid, your life experience is not happening, then how does that, even affect my mental state when, someone is telling me that my daily existence is fabricated and that I'm, quote unquote, making it up? That's ridiculous to even, suggest that.
Yes, and I agree with you. Alex, do you think that people are afraid to admit that there is systematic racism, or do you think they are just plain ignorant?
I think the vast majority of people are ignorant, but I think that it's not their fault. That's part of systematic racism, is to make it hidden, but then convince people and convince the mass majority of otherwise. Convince them that this isn't a problem and convince them that, hey, we have a black president. How can we be a racist state? How can racism exist when we have a black president? And you have successful black and brown people, like all of our athletes, musicians. All these people are making millions and millions of dollars. Well, how could we be in a racist system? You have black and brown folks that go to college. So how can we be a racist society? These are the exact images and exact realities that have been used to convince the dominant group otherwise. But honestly, this, through some own research and knowledge that I've acquired, I've, discovered that racism itself, well, obviously the social construct, there's only one race, the human race, but race was developed as a social construct as a means to divide people back in the colonial days when migrants first came to America, and you had black and white sharecroppers who were making dirt money, were being treated very, very poorly, and actually started to band together to work against the dominant elite. And once that happened, those white dominant elites decided, we're going to separate these groups, and we're going to make sure that they are fighting against each other and have these contentions so that, we can still remain in power. So what they did was introduce race and say, you white folks are better than these black people because you're white, because of the color of your skin, and we're going to afford you these certain benefits. We're going to let your sharecropping term end a lot sooner than them. We're going to give you property, and then we're going to put you in charge of them. And so that's what's happening. And you still see that happening today. And so, these things have been ingrained in people's minds. These thought processes have been ingrained in people's minds for centuries. And that is a very difficult thing to break, and that's a very difficult thing to, for a white person to accept, because they don't see that. Because the system has been built to cater to them and their whiteness, and it becomes very difficult to stand in the mirror, especially as a white person, to stand in that mirror and say, I see how this system has been built to cater to me and how I benefit from it, and how, even more importantly, how people are not benefiting from it and are actually being harmed by the system.
You make some good points. I want to ask you about, because this is a sports show too, do you believe that people of color go into sports because of the fact that sports is colorblind? It's not necessary. You get picked based on performance. Do you think that's why most kids, young kids, people of color, do they want to be in sports because of that, or because?
So American sports, at least, the majority of American sports are dominated by black athletes, men and women. And this is because, at least specifically for the men, you have a situation in which we were literally bred for optimal physical performance in the fields in slavery days. So when you have a situation where these are our skill set, and then doubly, when you're going to an educational institution that is subpar, the best thing you can do is, not the best thing that you can do, but you're very active then in sports and, basketball, football, after school and whatnot, and you're very good. And then you have a situation in which you see that people are getting paid to be an athlete, and that ends up looking like the only way out for you, out of the hood, out of your situation. And so that's what you pursue, and it's very successful for people. And so more and more people do it, and then that ends up being the only way in which people think that you can get out is either being an athlete, being a rapper, or something like that. I wouldn't necessarily say it's because it's colorblind, but I would say that's because we've been, athletic is what black men specifically have been conditioned for, and it has been put in our minds that is one of the only ways that you can progress